Hi, class, and welcome to a conversation about stress for topic 3 of our course. Throughout this presentation, we will talk about the following: what is stress, causes of stress, types of stress, stress theories, stress and our bodies, and stress and work. Essentially, stress refers to demands by both our internal and or our external environment that takes us out of balance. And in essence, the demand is greater than our capacity to cope with that demand in the moment. It can impact us physically as well as psychologically and requires us to take some sort of action so that we can restore our balance. Causes of stress. What is stressful to one person versus another, or what serves as a stressor, is based on our perception, so it's very individual in nature. What is stressful for one person might depend on factors such as your social support system, your outlook on life, and your coping skills. For example, the morning commute might be stressful to the person who views it as an inconvenience, or if they're worried about traffic, but it could be relaxing if it's viewed as an opportunity to think and plan for the day. So you can see how your mindset, the way that you think about events happening in your life, the way that you think about stress can impact how you respond and how your body responds to that event. Stressors that involve main aspects of your life or last for long periods of time may be more likely to cause you distress and disrupt someone's functioning versus a stressor that might be more short term um, and happen on just a one time basis. Stress can be both negative or positive. For example, if someone is getting married or if they recently were promoted at work, those are both positive events. But there can be some elements of stress that someone can experience if you allow yourself to. There may also be more negative events that happen, such as being in a rocky relationship or if you have an exhausting work schedule. In all of these situations, your body may initiate that stress response, and you get to decide in part what you do with that. And if you have a more positive mindset, you can use that stress response to your advantage. And you can also use your coping strategies so that you can effectively and proactively and positively deal with those stressors as you experience them. Stressors can be grouped into three main categories. And there are other ways to group stressors as well, but we'll focus on these three for now. They can be grouped as conflicts, which involves two or more incompatible needs or goals. The conflict could involve choosing between two desirable or two disagreeable alternatives. There are frustrations, such as obstacles that interfere with you achieving personal goals or meeting needs. The obstacles could be internal, such as having a chronic illness, or it could be external. For example, if someone experiences racism or some form of discrimination. And then there are pressures. Those are demands that one places on oneself or demands or expectations that others may place on you. So I want you to sit for just a few seconds and think about a stressor that you might have experienced recently, or a few stressors that you might have experienced recently, and see if they fit into one of these categories. So there are different types of stress. There is acute stress. Acute stress is the most common type of stress. It's usually short term and does not cause severe damage to the body, because your body will usually rest once this stressful event stops, and your life more or less might go back to normal. An example might be a car accident, a call that your child is sick at school, seeing a wild animal while you're walking your dog, such as a coyote, which is an issue in the area that I currently live in. So, for example, when I'm walking my dog, if I were to see that coyote, my stress response would be initiated. And then once I am out of that stressful situation, my body goes back to that more balanced state and things go back to normal for me. Episodic acute stress refers to acute stress episodes that occur more frequently. Individuals juggling episodic acute stress might be facing stressful situations and their life may appear or feel as if it's out of control. And people who find themselves in this category may find themselves in a constant stressful state, might resist lifestyle changes. Next, there is chronic stress, and chronic stress can have a strong impact on your physical as well as your mental health. It refers to those unrelenting demands and pressures that might take place for an undetermined period of time. It can cause wear and tear on the body, particularly if this is something that is experienced daily. It may be difficult for someone in a chronically stressful situation to see a way out and to be able to be proactive and come up with ways to adequately cope with what they are experiencing. And unfortunately, what could happen at times is someone might get used to a chronically stressful situation. It's a part of their lives, it's happening in the background of their life every day, as opposed to the acute or the episodic acute forms of stress, in which when there's an onset of it, it's very clear and distinct that this stressful situation has come into play. Chronic stress could include situations such as the loss of a job and all that comes along with that, going through a divorce, being in an unhealthy relationship, any form of abuse, such as emotional or physical abuse, the death of a loved one, dealing with a loved one who is chronically ill, or dealing with your own chronic illness. All of these things can um, create chronically stressful situations for someone. And it's very important to be able to take care of yourself, particularly when these are situations that might be out of your control, to be able to take care of yourself and to ensure that your emotional health is at the forefront of what you're doing so that you can, one, have a change of mindset, and two, minimize the impact that those chronic stressors are having on both your emotional as well as your physical health. As parts of the required readings or videos for this week, there is a video about childhood trauma and the effect of that trauma on the brain, and how those chronic stressors that children may experience, such as living in poverty or experience abuse of some sort, can have long lasting effects on children's behavior, their cognitive abilities, and their personalities. So it's very important for individuals who work with children or who, work in the school system to keep that in mind, that as they are working with children who may display high levels of behavior or emotional difficulties, that could be a child who's been impacted by trauma, that could be a child who is in a chronically stressful situation, and because they don't know how to adequately cope with all that's happening, They speak to you through their behaviors. Now we'll move on to traumatic stress. Traumatic stress refers to a catastrophic event. Perhaps someone might have been assaulted, or there was a natural disaster such as a hurricane or an earthquake. Once the initial shock has passed and the emotional fallout has been experienced, most people are able to gradually recover. Some people may develop post traumatic stress disorder because the psychological and physical symptoms that were triggered by the traumatic event stay with them and balance is not achieved. So their life is unable to return to a sense of normalcy or to a new normal. And symptoms of PTSD might include having flashbacks, depression, chronic irritability, and avoiding certain places that trigger those sorts of memories. Now we move on to talk about theories of stress and how they have evolved over time. So, we will touch on four models that have evolved over time and built upon each other. But there have been a number of different models that have been presented to try to explain how human beings respond to stress. The first model is a model that you may have heard of before. It was developed by Canon and it's called the fight or flight model. And essentially, this is proposing that a series of biochemical changes happen in your body when you experience a stressor that prepare you to deal with the threat or whatever danger it is. The model proposes that when you're presented with the stressor, our sympathetic nervous system is activated. And once it's activated, there's a system wide response that happens throughout our body that prepares us to either stay and fight or to flee the situation. So we have adrenaline that pumps through our body, which increases our alertness. Our heart and our respiratory rate are increased. Blood is diverted from some of our internal organs and our skin to our skeletal muscles. It all of these changes take place so that the body is able to put forward a large amount of energy in a very short amount of time. It allows the individual to, as I said earlier, either stay and tackle whatever this is head on or to get out of there as quickly as they can. Although there is some validity to this model, and yes, the body does have this physical response when faced with the stressor, the model is limited in that there's an emphasis on the physiological aspects without any indication on how our psychological resources impact our response to stress. And the model also doesn't highlight how we cope with long term stress.